I never expected to become a punchline that night. Clara's Miami fashion showcase was supposed to be her moment. I flew in from Charleston, left a table half-finished in the garage, and showed up in the same pair of boots I wore when I proposed to her. Call me sentimental, but I figured she'd appreciate the gesture. I thought I'd stand in the back, nod along politely, maybe grab a drink and disappear into the applause when it was all over. Instead, I ended up center stage without ever stepping on it. The venue was industrial, high ceilings, and warehouse chic decor. Clara's designs were draped over tall mannequins under track lighting, each one tagged with some poetic title like Urban Drift or Soft Rebellion. There were photographers, influencers with ring lights, and people who clinked glasses mid-sentence like it was part of their dialect. I didn't belong, and I knew it. Still, I kept my back straight, wore the stiff collar without complaining, and smiled every time someone glanced my way like I was part of the exhibit. It started during intermission. Clara's coworker, Justin Haynes, grabbed the mic for what I thought would be a quick toast. I'd only met the guy twice before, both times leaving with the impression that he thought sarcasm was a personality. He had that slick, showroom energy, button-down shirt half unbuttoned, sleeves rolled just so, and the kind of smirk that made you feel like he was always in on some joke you hadn't heard yet. But what came next wasn't a toast. It was a carefully packaged insult parade, and I was the float. To Clara's endlessly supportive husband, he said, grinning like he knew exactly what he was about to set on fire. The man behind the reclaimed wood and the Etsy page and the garage empire. Laughter rolled through the crowd like a practiced cue. Let's raise a glass to Grayson Miller, he continued, who's proving that if you believe hard enough, even woodworking can be a full-time hobby. That got a bigger laugh. Too big. The kind of laugh people use to signal they're part of the in-crowd. I felt it ripple through the room and land on me like warm shame. I looked for Clara. She was standing maybe 10 feet from him, drink in hand, watching. She didn't say a word. Just smiled, soft, polite, effortless. The kind of smile she wore at networking events, the kind that said, I'm here, but not really involved. And then she handed him her glass. That's when something twisted in my chest, not anger, not yet. Just this tight coil of awareness. Of how close they were standing. Of how familiar her gesture looked. Of how rehearsed this all felt. Justin wasn't done. You know, he added, pacing a little like he was doing a stand-up set, we always wonder where Clara's groundedness comes from. And now we know it's from the man sanding cabinet doors in South Carolina while she conquers the runways of Miami and beyond. More laughter. More nodding. More that strange synchronized energy that made me feel like the butt of a joke that had been circulating long before tonight. I laughed too. A little. Just enough to keep the room from freezing. I even clapped at the end of it because that's what you do when you're outnumbered, perform. But I knew something had shifted. Not just in the room, but in me. I moved to the far end of the bar and ordered a bourbon, neat. The bartender gave me a look I couldn't place, sympathy, maybe, or confusion. I must have looked out of place. A guy with rough hands and sun-worn skin trying to navigate a room full of velvet and angles. First time at one of these? The bartender asked. I nodded. Probably the last two. Clara eventually found me. She slipped beside me at the bar like nothing had happened. Did you hate it? She asked, eyes gleaming, cheeks still flushed from the spotlight. Be honest. It was something I said. I tried to keep my tone even. Tried to sound like a man who wasn't unraveling one thread at a time. She tilted her head, catching just enough sarcasm to notice. Oh, come on. That's just Justin. He's theatrical. He doesn't mean anything by it. You didn't stop him. He's dramatic. That's his sense of humor. Don't take it so personally. That right there, it wasn't just the dismissal. It was the smoothness of it. Like she'd already anticipated this conversation. Like she'd rehearsed the line in the mirror before heading to the showcase. I didn't realize we were putting my life on display, I said. You're reading too much into it, Gray. It was just a joke. Felt like more than a joke. She sighed and sipped her drink. Can you not make tonight about you? That landed harder than anything Justin said. I wanted to respond, wanted to say something that would unearth what I was really feeling, but I couldn't find the words. Not ones that would land cleanly in this room with all its buzz and glare. So I let the silence do the talking. For the rest of the night, Clara stayed near Justin. They talked, laughed, leaned close over their drinks. I saw her touch his arm once, brief, casual, but charged. Like muscle memory. Like it had happened before. People kept passing by me, brushing shoulders, offering smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I nodded back, but I was somewhere else entirely. Standing in our garage back home, staring at the half-finished dining table I'd carved her initials into under the edge. The one she said would be too rustic for the new place. On the flight home, I kept replaying that moment. Her smile. His hand on the small of her back. The ease between them. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that I was insecure. But deep down I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. Back in Charleston, Clara didn't bring up the showcase again. Not the speech. Not the jokes. Not the way Justin looked at her like he knew something I didn't. A week passed and still nothing. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just silence. And I kept waiting for her to make it right. But sometimes silence is louder than any confession. The morning after the showcase, I woke up before the sun. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily overhead, replaying every second from the night before like it was some twisted short film. I kept hearing the laughter, Justin's voice, smooth and mocking, the crowd clapping, the high-pitched giggles from people I didn't even know. Worse than the sound, though, was the sight of Clara standing there, champagne in hand, letting it happen. I wasn't the kind of man who snooped. Never had been. I'd always figured that if you had to start going through your partner's stuff, the relationship was already halfway in the grave. But that morning something in me shifted somewhere between instinct and desperation. Clara was still asleep, breathing softly beside me. Her phone, face down on the nightstand, buzzed once. Then again. She didn't move. I stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. The lock screen flashed briefly, no password prompt. She never bothered setting one. I used to think it was a sign of trust. Now I wondered if it was arrogance. I reached for it slowly, careful not to make the mattress shift too much. My hands were steady, but something in my chest pulsed with guilt. Still, I opened it. Her texts were mostly clean, usual stuff from coworkers, family, friends. But buried halfway down the screen was a thread labeled only with a champagne emoji and the initials JH. Justin Haynes. It wasn't what I expected. No hearts, no Miss US, no scandalous photos. But it was worse than that. The messages were personal. There were snapshots TS of hotel lobbies. A bottle of wine on a windowsill. A menu with a hand his pointing at a dessert option and a caption that said, "Your favorite, right?" Then there was a photo of Clara in a mirror, one I hadn't seen before, wearing the silk dress I'd given her for Christmas last year. A low, plunging neckline. Her hair pulled up. She was taking the photo herself, her reflection framed perfectly in some high-end bathroom. I kept scrolling, each swipe heavier than the last. Then I found the video. It was taken inside a loft. Brooklyn, by the look of the exposed brick and tall windows. I knew that loft. We'd stayed there once on a whim during a long weekend, back when we still made time for each other. I'd built the kitchen island in that loft with reclaimed cypress, sanded every board by hand while she sipped red wine and played Nina Simone through a Bluetooth speaker. In the video, Clara was in that same kitchen, wearing that same dress. She spun slowly, her laughter light, different. Softer. More breath than voice. Someone behind the camera said her name. Clara. The way he said it, it didn't sound like a coworker. It sounded like someone staking a claim. She smiled back toward the lens, walking closer. Then the frame shifted, jostled slightly as Justin stepped into view. He was shirtless, a wine glass in hand. He kissed her shoulder. Then the video cut. I sat there on the edge of the bed, the phone still in my hand like I'd touched something radioactive. The air in the room felt thinner. Clara shifted behind me, murmuring in her sleep, unaware that the truth had just detonated in front of me. I didn't wake her. I couldn't. I slipped out of bed, walked barefoot into the hallway and closed the door behind me. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what I was even feeling. Anger, sure. Betrayal, definitely. But also this hollowness. Like the floor beneath our marriage had collapsed and I'd only just realized we'd been standing on stilts. I went out to the porch with a mug of black coffee and her phone still in my palm. The sun was starting to rise over the oaks that lined our street. It should have been peaceful. But nothing about that moment felt still. I opened the video again, this time watching it all the way through. Not because I needed confirmation, I already knew. But because I needed to understand the full weight of it. How far this had gone. How long it had been going on. The timestamp on the file was dated 3 weeks before the Miami showcase. 3 weeks. Which meant the joke wasn't spontaneous. The laughter wasn't accidental. The entire room probably already knew what I didn't. That made me feel sick. Betrayal I could almost stomach. But humiliation? That was a different kind of wound. By the time Clara got up, I was back in the kitchen pretending to scroll through my own phone. She walked in wearing one of my old t-shirts like she had every weekend for the last 6 years. She smiled, kissed my cheek, poured herself coffee, and didn't notice anything different about me. "Want to go to brunch?" she asked. "Justin says there's a new spot in Midtown." I looked at her. That name, Justin, sounded like gravel in my throat. "Think I'll pass today," I said. "Gotta finish that sideboard for the Whitmores." She shrugged, unfazed. Suit yourself. I'll bring you back something. And just like that, she was gone. No clue what I'd seen. No clue what I now knew. She got into her car, sent a few texts, I bet money I knew who they were to, and drove off into her carefully constructed double life. I didn't follow her. Didn't text her. I didn't even watch her drive away. I opened my laptop instead. There's something about grief that makes you obsessive. You dig not because you're curious, but because you need the pain to be justified. Because if you can find enough evidence, you can stop wondering if it was all in your head. I logged into our shared cloud storage. She had everything backed up. Photos, notes, clips from past shows. At first, it was harmless. But then I found a folder labeled Inspo. Inside were *TS of old texts, love poems, hotel bookings. Some were hers, some were Justin's. They'd been traveling together. Miami wasn't the first city. There were timestamps from Austin, from Montreal, even one from Tokyo, a city I'd always wanted to visit with her. A city she said was too hectic for us. There was a selfie of the two of them in a hotel mirror. She was wearing a bathrobe. He was behind her, his head against hers. She looked different, like a version of herself I hadn't seen in years. Relaxed. Selfish. Alive. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But the tears never came. What I felt was more complicated, this quiet kind of devastation. Like I'd been erased from the story without even being told the book had ended. I shut the laptop. Clara came home hours later, talking about omelets and truffle oil and some boutique she wanted to visit next week. She asked if I'd sanded the sideboard. I nodded. She didn't notice that I hadn't spoken more than 5 words to her all day. That night, we climbed into bed side by side. She pulled the comforter up to her chin and leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to. And I just stared at the ceiling, wide awake. The truth was sitting right there in the drawer next to me, her phone, her photos, the video I couldn't unsee. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But I knew this wasn't the kind of thing you forgave. This was the kind of thing you exposed. 2 weeks. That's how long I sat with the knowledge. 2 weeks of watching Clara move through the house like nothing had happened. She was more affectionate during that time, touchier, sweeter, almost unnaturally so. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was performance. Maybe she knew I knew something and was trying to keep the crack sealed just a little longer. But I couldn't bring myself to confront her outright, not yet. I needed her to see it the way I saw it. Not in a fight. Not in a quiet kitchen standoff. I wanted her to feel it. The betrayal. The exposure. So when she invited me to her next fashion showcase, this one in Manhattan, I didn't hesitate. I thought you hated these, she said, sipping her tea across the counter. I want to be there, I told her. She looked at me a second longer than necessary, like she was trying to read a subtext I hadn't written out loud. That means a lot, she finally said. Really? I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. But she didn't seem to notice. She flew up 2 days early with her team. I followed the day of the show, arriving with just a carry-on and a plan I'd rehearsed 100 times on the flight. I didn't book a hotel. I didn't even tell her when I landed. Instead, I went straight to the venue. It was a renovated theater off Canal, high ceilings, dim lighting, exposed scaffolding over the runway. I'd been there once before, years ago, when Clara was still hustling out of pop-up tents and Instagram DMs. Back then, she asked me to hang the lights myself. Now there were teams for that. And I was just another name on the guest list. Except I didn't walk in through the front door. I walked in through the side where the crew unloaded gear. A friend of mine, Mason, ran tech setups for events like these. We hadn't talked in a while, but when I called and said I needed a favor, one that involved discretion and access to the projection booth, he didn't ask questions. Just said, send me the file and tell me when. So I sent him the video. The one from the Brooklyn loft. No edits. No context. Just truth. You sure? He asked over the phone. I'm sure. That night, I wore black. Jeans, jacket, boots. Blended in with the art crowd just enough to be ignored. The venue buzzed with energy, designers, bloggers, critics, models drifting like wisps between circles of conversation. Clara was backstage. I didn't ask. I didn't need to see her yet. 10 minutes before the show started, Mason found me near the sound table. He handed me a lanyard and nodded. It's queued up. You get one *T at this, man. I only need one. He walked off. I stayed where I was, sipping flat champagne and pretending like I wasn't about to detonate my marriage in front of 100 people. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. Spotlights shifted over the catwalk. Clara stepped out from backstage in a navy blazer and heels, all confidence and poise. She welcomed the crowd, thanked sponsors, did her usual intro speech. Her voice echoed through the space, smooth, professional, polished. I slipped up the stairs to the booth while the music kicked on. Mason was already gone. He left the laptop open, the file highlighted. I hovered my finger over the spacebar and waited. The first model was halfway down the runway when I hit play. The screen behind the stage flickered. Static. A shift in color. Then it started. The video from the loft, Clara in that silk dress, spinning under the soft light, laughing in that uninhibited way I hadn't heard in years. The room went still. People thought it was part of the show at first. Artistic, maybe? A promotional clip. Until her voice came through, clear as water. I needed this. Then Justin stepped into frame. There was a collective inhale from the crowd. I watched from the balcony as heads turned, necks craned, murmurs built like a tide. On screen, he kissed her shoulder. The video cut to black. Then silence. Clara stood at center stage, backlit now, her outline sharp against the darkened screen. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Her mouth parted slightly as if she were about to say something. But nothing came out. All around her, people began whispering. Shuffling. Some looked away out of politeness. Some stared straight at her, wide-eyed and waiting. I didn't wait. I slipped back down the stairs, ducked behind a curtain, and walked straight out the back exit. I didn't need to see what came next. The truth had done the talking. I walked a few blocks before I felt my heart slow down. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear, just release. Months of suspicion, tension, disconnection, all of it crashing at once and leaving this strange quiet in its wake. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know it was Clara. I let it ring. I found a dive bar 3 streets over and ordered a whiskey, neat. The place was almost empty. The bartender didn't ask why a guy in a nice jacket looked like he'd just walked out of a funeral. I appreciated that. Halfway through my second drink, I finally checked my phone. 9 missed calls. 3 texts. Grayson, what the hell are you doing? We need to talk. Now. That was cruel. Cruel. That word sat with me longer than I expected. Cruel was watching someone humiliate you in front of strangers while sipping champagne like it was background noise. Cruel was turning an asterisk Macy into an inside joke and letting someone else narrate your marriage. Telling the truth? That wasn't cruelty. That was correction. I didn't answer. Didn't type anything. I scrolled to my photo library, looked at the video again, and deleted it. Not out of forgiveness, but because I didn't need it anymore. She had seen it. They all had. I stayed in New York one more night. Rented a small studio Airbnb in Queens and lay awake most of it. Not angry. Not relieved. Just numb. The kind of numb that comes after you finally stop pretending. When you take your hand off a wound and let it bleed in peace. The next morning, I bought a one-way ticket home. On the flight, I watched the clouds shift below us and wondered if Clara would ever try to spin the story. If she'd say it was just a fling. A mistake. A lapse in judgment. She would, I knew. She had that in her. But spin it all she wanted. The footage had aired. The silence had followed. And the look on her face when the screen lit up, that would stay with her. She never imagined I'd speak her language. But I had. And I'd spoken it loud. The morning after the showcase, I stepped off the plane in Charleston with one bag and no messages waiting on my phone. Clara hadn't called again. She hadn't texted, emailed, or sent any furious voice memos. The silence didn't feel like surrender, it felt calculated. Like she was waiting for me to make the next move. Like she was giving me time to cool off, maybe even craft an apology in her head that sounded noble enough to rewrite what happened on that screen. I didn't respond. Instead, I went straight home, straight to the garage, and stood there in the sawdust and quiet. I hadn't touched a tool in days. The sideboard I was building for the Whitmores still sat unfinished, its edges raw. I placed my hand on it like I was checking for a pulse and wondered how long I'd been sleepwalking in this space, building things to avoid tearing others down. Around noon, her first message came in. I'm sorry you found out like that. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. A second followed a minute later. Can we please talk before you do anything drastic? There it was, the attempt to minimize. The urge to contain the damage. She didn't ask how I felt. Didn't say she regretted it. Just that she was sorry I found out like that. Like it was an inconvenience more than a betrayal. I left the texts unanswered. That night, after 2 beers and half a dozen rewrites of what I wanted to say, but never sent, I remembered the tablet she used to keep in the bedroom. Clara hadn't taken it with her. I found it tucked behind a stack of home design magazines under our coffee table. The battery was dead. I plugged it in, waited. It powered on slowly, like it was hesitating too. Her cloud account was still linked. She never bothered logging out of anything. I once thought that was trust. Now I saw it as sloppiness, cocky, unguarded sloppiness. The synced files came through. Photos, PDFs of fabric invoices, voice notes, journal entries. I clicked on one labeled with a date. A Tuesday night from 5 weeks ago. Clara's voice came through, low and tired, like she'd recorded it while lying in bed. I keep wondering what it would feel like to be someone else for a while. Someone who doesn't have to check in, someone who just disappears when they want to. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, listening as she went on. It's not that I don't love Grayson. I do. Or maybe I did. Or maybe I love the version of us I imagined we'd grow into. But lately, I just feel invisible. Like I'm performing this role and he's backstage, building something I never asked for. My jaw clenched. She always said she loved the way I built things for us. The cedar deck, the pantry shelves, the table we ate every meal on. Every board, every joint, every carved curve, it was all for her. But to her, it was background noise. With Justin, I'm remembered. I'm seen. I feel like I'm waking up for the first time in years. There was no regret in her voice. Just reflection. Like she was cataloging her reinvention, testing out how it sounded in her own ears. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. Another voice note, this one shorter. Sometimes I think he knows. Grayson. But he won't say anything. It's easier to just keep building. She was right. I had known, maybe not the full truth, not the video, not the hotel rooms, but some part of me had sensed the rot. I'd buried myself in sawdust and sketches, choosing quiet over confrontation. She'd mistaken that for blindness. But I saw her. I saw every version she tried to be, every layer she peeled off for someone else. I listened to all the recordings. Every last one. By the end of it, I wasn't angry anymore. Just scorched. Like a house that had already burned down and was now nothing but a blackened frame. I went upstairs, packed a duffel bag with clothes, grabbed my keys, and drove to my sister's house. Katie opened the door in sweatpants and a paint-streaked hoodie mid-renovation on her guest room. Hey, I said, voice raw. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug without a single question. We stayed up late. I told her everything. And she cried. Not for Clara. For me. She said she'd always had doubts, quiet ones. There was always something about how she looked at you when you weren't looking, Katie said. Like you were standing in her way, not beside her. I stayed there 2 nights. On the third, I went back to our house while Clara was at work or wherever she said she was going. I wasn't sure if that distinction mattered anymore. I boxed up her things, one room at a time. Neat, precise. I didn't throw anything. I didn't break a single item. I just wanted her gone. Her scent. Her clothes. Her presence. While clearing out her vanity drawers, I found a small silver flash drive labeled private_CK. I almost didn't check it. Almost tossed it into the pile with the rest of her keepsakes. But curiosity is a brutal thing. I plugged it into my laptop. There were video diaries. Dozens. Little clips of Clara talking to herself in bed, in hotel rooms, in dressing rooms, at boutiques. Not performative. Just confessional. In one, she sat cross-legged on the bed, hair damp, no makeup. It's not even about Justin. It's about waking up. I needed something to shake Grayson awake. He just kept building things. And I kept disappearing. She paused. Justin wasn't the first. I stopped keeping count. None of them mattered. What mattered was the escape. My fingers went numb. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was unrepentant. Each video layered more distance between us. Every time I thought, maybe this can be salvaged, another clip crushed that thought flat. This wasn't a story of one mistake. This was a pattern. A habit. A secret life wrapped in designer fabric and curated smiles. I pulled the flash drive out and stared at it for a long time. Then I went outside, grabbed a lighter from the garage, and burned it. Right there in the fire pit we'd built together last fall. The flash drive twisted in the flames, warped plastic giving off a toxic scent. It felt symbolic, if nothing else. She'd wanted a version of herself that felt free, untethered. Well, now she had it. Ashes in place of forgiveness. The next day, I changed the locks. Filed the paperwork. Told her through a single, short message. I know everything. Don't come home. There was no reply. None needed. I took the rest of the week off work, sat on the porch with my coffee, and watched the world go by in a way I hadn't in years. The silence wasn't empty. It was finally mine. I thought I'd burned it all. After watching her secret life flicker and curl into ash in our fire pit, I figured that was the end of it, the final match struck, the chapter closed. But grief, it turns out, has layers. It doesn't come with instructions, and closure isn't something you can always schedule. It was a rainy Tuesday when I found the second flash drive. I was clearing out what was left of Clara's jewelry box. I'd left it alone the first time I packed her things. Something about rifling through velvet trays of rings and trinkets felt too personal even then. But I was in a different headspace now. I didn't care if she'd worn this necklace to our anniversary dinner or if that earring had been passed down by her grandmother. I just wanted everything out. That's when I saw it. Wedged beneath the lining. A tiny, rose gold USB stick. Labeled in all caps. Private_CK again. At first, I thought maybe I hadn't burned the real one. Maybe I'd grabbed the wrong drive. But this one was heavier. Newer. Clara had always been methodical. If she made a copy of something, it wasn't by accident. I stood there, flash drive pinched between my fingers, unsure if I wanted to know more. But curiosity is a sickness once it takes root. I plugged it into my laptop. The folder structure was cleaner than the last one. No chaos. No hotel selfies or half-drunk monologues. Just one folder labeled Journal. Inside were 23 videos. All of them dated. Sequential. Like entries. I clicked the first one. Clara appeared, sitting on the floor of what looked like a hotel room. She wore glasses and a gray hoodie. No makeup. Her face looked young, raw in a way I hadn't seen in years. April 4th. Midtown. I'm doing this because I need to hear myself say it out loud. She sighed like someone forcing breath into a stiff balloon. I've been in love with two versions of myself. One that Grayson sees and one I only recognize in mirrors when I'm alone. I'm tired of pretending they can be the same person. The clip ended. My stomach turned. I clicked the second entry. This one was taken in a car. The camera was propped up on the dash. April 8th. I told him I was at a planning dinner. I lied. I was with Justin. Again. She looked directly at the lens. It's not about S***X. It's about feeling like someone's watching you with new eyes. Like you haven't already been categorized and archived. Like you're not just the wife of someone who always has sawdust on his collar. She laughed bitterly. It hit like a slap. Entry after entry followed the same rhythm. Clara peeling back excuses, rationalizations, declarations of identity as if she were auditioning for a life without me. She never cried. Not once. Each confession was clinical. Like she was archiving her thoughts for a museum that would one day document the slow extinction of our marriage. One video shook me more than the others. It was labeled simply, "If he ever finds out." She was lying in bed, light from a TV flickering on her face. The room was silent except for the soft hum of an air conditioner. She stared into the camera for a full 10 seconds before speaking. If Grayson ever finds this, I want him to know it was never about him not being good enough. She paused, swallowing hard. It was about me needing more than good. I wanted danger. I wanted to be someone else. I kept telling myself he'd be fine. That he wouldn't notice. Or worse, that he'd forgive me because that's just who he is. She blinked slowly, her voice softer now. But if he's watching this, I guess he found out. So, I'm sorry. She turned off the camera. The file ended. I sat there with my hand over my mouth, not sure if I was going to scream or laugh. She'd made a personal documentary of her betrayal. A portfolio of self-justification. And the worst part? It didn't feel cruel. It felt methodical. Like she was trying to understand herself by watching her own descent. I didn't delete the drive. Not this one. I didn't watch every file. Not yet. Maybe never. But I backed it up, encrypted it, and stashed it in a safety deposit box under my name. I wasn't keeping it as leverage. I was keeping it because someday when the ache dulls into something tolerable, I might need to remind myself that none of it was my imagination. That she'd really said those things. Done those things. That I hadn't invented the distance or the deception. That I was there even when she tried to write me out of the story. That night, I walked through the house like a man visiting his own ruins. Every drawer I opened had traces of her. Her receipts, her hair ties, the little jars of creams she'd never used more than twice. I dumped it all into a single box. No labels. Just a note on top. You can pick these up whenever you're ready. Or not. I dropped the box off at Katie's house. Told her to text Clara if she ever asked. Then I went back to the house and stood in the center of our bedroom. I'd already stripped the bed, replaced the sheets. But the air still felt stale with old promises. So I pulled the mattress off the frame and dragged it outside. The sky was clear, stars cutting through the night like silent witnesses. I set the mattress by the curb and left it there. Not for trash. Not for anyone else to use. Just to say, this part is over. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Clara. I don't know why I answered the phone at all, I never intended to, but my thumb hit it while clearing my screen. The message played automatically. Hey, I got the message. I don't know what to say. You probably hate me and I wouldn't blame you. But I saw Katie. She didn't say much, but she told me you're okay. That helps. I'm not asking for anything. I wanted you to know I'm moving out of the condo next month. I'm going back to LA for a while. Maybe longer. She paused. I left something for you. Not because I expect forgiveness. Just because you once said stories should end with something honest. The message cut off. There was no second one. At first, I didn't care what she left. But when I came home that evening, there was a small envelope in the mailbox. No stamp. Just my name written in her handwriting. Inside was a photo. Me in our garage. Covered in sawdust. Bent over a half-finished table, grinning like an idiot while Clara snapped the picture. On the back, she'd written, "This is who I remember. I hope you do too." I stared at it for a long time. Then I slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk and shut it. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. Just filed away. Like everything else she couldn't hold onto. Clara always knew how to exit a room before it caught fire. I'll give her that. After the fallout, she went quiet. No late-night texts. No rambling apologies. Just that photo in the mailbox, that single voicemail, and silence. I should have known it wouldn't last. It was a week after she left town that I got the alert. An email from our old shared travel account, one she must have forgotten to disconnect. Flight confirmation. Outbound to Singapore. 2 tickets. Both under her name, well, technically. One was hers. The other? Justin Haynes. I didn't even feel angry. Just cold. Tired. Like watching the final scene in a movie you already knew the ending to. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the audacity. After everything, after the video, the confession, the funeral pyre of our marriage, she was boarding planes with the same man she blew it all up for. The worst part? She booked it using miles we'd earned together. I closed the laptop and sat there for a long while. Then I called in a favor. My cousin Daniel works in Customs and Border Enforcement. We're not close, but family's still family when you ask the right way. I forwarded him the flight details, flagged the names. Just do me a favor, I said. If something looks off, maybe give it a little extra scrutiny. Turns out Justin had more baggage than just Clara. Unreported income. Business dealings with companies in Panama flagged for tax evasion. Nothing that made headlines, but enough that he probably should have thought twice before flying internationally under his real name. They didn't make it past Changi Airport. Clara was released within a few hours, but Justin? Detained. And blacklisted. I found out through Daniel's casual update, guess you ruined their layover romance. I didn't gloat. Didn't text her. Didn't need to. Sometimes the world does the cleanup for you. After Singapore, there was nothing left to burn. And that's when the real healing started, not loud, not cinematic. Just one piece at a time. I packed what was left of her clothes and dropped them at Goodwill. I didn't label the boxes. Didn't even close the lids. That part of the story didn't deserve finality. It just needed to be gone. Then I returned to my roots. The cabin in Arizona had been my father's. We used to go there every summer, no Wi-Fi, no cell service. Just the sound of wind dragging its fingers through pine. I hadn't been back since the funeral. It felt like unfinished business. So I drove. 13 hours with only gas station coffee and Springsteen albums for company. When I arrived, the cabin was dust-covered and empty. But the moment I opened the door, I felt something I hadn't in months: quiet. Not just the kind you hear, but the kind you carry. I stayed 3 weeks. Carved again. Sketched again. Didn't post a single thing online. I made a bench out of juniper. Then a rocking chair. Then a stool with a cracked edge I decided not to fix. Imperfections, I figured, were part of the story now. I called Katie. Told her everything. She cried again, but it was different this time. She told me she was proud of me for walking away, for not trying to fix what didn't want fixing. And for not losing the part of me that still knew how to make things with my hands. I came back to Charleston with sawdust in my hair and a plan. I signed up to teach beginner woodworking at the local trades college. Just a few nights a week. Nothing fancy. But it gave me purpose. And in that space, between drills and dovetails, I felt something crack open. Peace. Clara's name didn't come up anymore. Her fashion brand restructured quietly. She was removed from the leadership board, though no announcement ever made it to press. I may have sent an anonymous envelope to her HR, voice notes, videos, a few key photos. Not for revenge. For accountability. Some stories don't end in fire. Some just fade. And I finally stopped looking for her in every silence. She never sent a real apology. And I never needed one. Because sometimes the most powerful closure isn't what someone says. It's what they can't